My name is Andrew Zito. I am a faculty member in the Department of Psychology. My research really focuses on post-secondary mental health in the last 5 years or so has really been focused on that. And that partly because I'm the director of our campus mental health strategy at the University of Calgary, and I've been doing that for about 7 years now. But also focus on things like mental illness stigma, on developing programs to improve resilience, to improve mental health, to reduce stigma, the development and evaluation of those programming. So I've done a lot of work on all those related areas. I'm by no means an expert in academic integrity. I know some individuals here have a lot of expertise, so I lend on everybody in this room to if you have your experiences or thoughts or questions, please let us know. But I'll share my slides. But it is good to see a lot of different faces from different, where we were just going through the list here. So there's a lot of individuals from various post-secondaries across Canada, and I think we have some international participants as well. So it's really good to see. But before we move forward and with the presentation today, I do really want to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the territories that we're on and making sure that we're cognizant of the lands that and the peoples that were here before us as well. And I think that's a very important part to the beginning of any presentation. I want to just quickly go over the goals for today. I know you saw those in the description when you signed up, but what I really want to do for today is really talk about the different various factors that impact student mental health. This will lead to an exploration of, how is mental health and academic integrity related, and then offer some ways to think about academic integrity and mental health at different levels, but really focusing on, resources on how do we increase academic integrity as well as mental health. And this is more of a pictorial description of what I just said. So again, factors that impact mental health, student mental health, we have the biopsychosocial model there, which really is one way of thinking about the factors that impact mental health. And it includes stress, it includes situational or current factors, and I'll touch on those specifically. Then I'll talk about the relationship between mental health and academic integrity. And then we'll talk about some resources and ideas that we can really practice or implement to focus on increasing both of these. There's poll number 1. Lorelei, if you can implement poll number 1. I know we have various individuals here within the room here, but I wanted to get a sense of where everybody is, what their positions are or what they're involved in on their campuses. Getting some. There we go. There it keeps going. There you go. It keeps going. As we were practicing this, we're lucky that we did actually practice it because we were trying to figure out how to do the Zoom polls, but we figured it out. So I think we got 19. I think that's where we're starting at. So I think we can see the poll details. So let's see where everybody's from. Sorry, it takes a couple of different steps to see this type of poll. Sorry, I'll see if I can move to it. Okay, so grad students and student support. See more answers. Yeah, so there's grad students, there's academic staff. There are various individuals in this room. Okay, so we have a good broad sense of where everybody's at here. Sorry, I'm just gonna go back to sharing my slides. Let's see. Can everybody see my slides now? Okay, so poll number 2, what are you most interested in learning from today's session? There we go. Factors affecting mental health, impact. Yeah, so it looks like most people are looking or wanting to know the impact of mental health on academic integrity and vice versa. But there are some individuals who are interested in factors affecting mental health as well. So it's good to see there's a broad. Okay, so let's get into the presentation and factors that impact mental health. So I'm going to use the biopsychosocial model to really think about, the impacts or the factors that affect mental health and mental illness, right? This is one model. There are a lot of different models, but this is a accepted model that's been used for quite a while now. But really to highlight this model is to simply say, there's various factors, including biological factors. So there's genetic risk to that. There are some biochemical factors, substances also impact that as well. We also have things like psychological factors. So people's attitudes and beliefs, things like low self-esteem, thinking patterns, right? Negative thinking patterns, helplessness and stress, we'll get back to that, do impact mental illnesses and mental health. Social and environmental factors, so people's histories, past trauma, situational factors like family issues, lack of social support, negative life events. And we've been going through, that past couple of years with our pandemic, and I'll discuss a little bit about that. But something that we do talk about a lot is stress. Stress is essentially the body's reaction to challenging events, situations. And stress is something that we talk about a lot and often don't, we have an intuitive understanding, but we don't necessarily talk too in detail about it. But stress is essentially, again, our body's way of reacting to, these challenges, to situations. Some stress is great, right? It does help energize us, help motivate us, but it's where stress becomes too chronic or too much, or on a daily basis. Too much stress is not good for us. We know that, but it does have impact on our cognitive, emotional, physical, behavioral. And I want to highlight, the cognitive, emotional. So too much stress or chronic stress does lead to things like difficulty concentrating, memory problems, negativity, lack of self-confidence, things like that. Emotionally, it impacts us with, again, you can read up there, but moodiness, low morale, things like that. And, chronic stress, we haven't talked about burnout, and I won't talk about it too much, but again, too much chronic stress leads to burnout, which is defined by basically 3 things, right? It would be things like lower productivity is one outcome, disconnection from the work that you do, as well as exhaustion. So those are the 3 primary indicators of burnout. But again, you can see the impact of stress on our mental health and well-being. And specifically with students, there hasn't been too much work done within this population, but we do see stress is related to lower well-being, poor mental health, increased substance use, less sleep, less physical activity, poorer physical health. And you can see how, this is a cycle that, if you are stressed, you engage in, less self-care, you have lower well-being, this leads to more stress potentially. And again, this can be a cycle that leads to, worse outcomes. But one of the indicators also of related outcomes of stress is less motivation, less achievement, and dropout for students who are in post-secondary. And we can, view from a different point of view here. This is the National College Health Assessment. We've done this in 2013, 16, and 19 on campus. We just switched to a different survey that's more Canadian focused, but this provides some good context for what we're talking about here. Factors that impact or affect academic performance in post-secondary students. So we have the Alberta reference group here, the Ontario reference group, as well as Canadian reference group. I think in 2016, there was, I think, 40 or 50 post-secondary institutions that participate in Canada. You can see stress continues to be the top one that impacts academic performance. We see some mental health problems there as well, anxiety, depression, arguably sleep or difficulties can be related to all this as well. So again, we really want to just think about, all those factors that impact mental health. Again, stress is one of those impacts mental health, which has related outcomes for academic performance. So we talked about, again, a couple of things already. We talked about the biopsychosocial model. We talked about stress specifically as an impact or a factor that impacts mental health. Now let's talk a little bit about our current situation. We've been in the pandemic for a couple of years now. Is it more than that? It's 2.5 years, right? We see headlines like this all the time. A second wave of mental devastation due to COVID-19 is imminent. You can see on this study that I'm citing here, Edmund, they looked at depression symptoms before and during COVID. So you can see look at the blue bars here, and you can see, none, mild, moderate, severely, moderately severe, and severe, right? So these are the percentage of US adults that show either no symptoms, mild, moderate, moderately severe, or severe symptoms. And you can see before COVID, there was about 75% with none, and then 45% actually after or during COVID actually had some, so as a drop, right? So you can see as we moved along during the pandemic, there's more individuals in the adult population with depression symptoms, right? So again, this really signals the worsening of our mental health during the pandemic. And then you can see at the bottom left here, the pandemic has an impact on mental health, student mental health, and worsening of student mental health. And we can, our friends at the Mental Health Commission of Canada participated with, I think, Caucus, so the Canadian Association for College and University Student Services. They did a survey of 69 post-secondary institutions across Canada, and what they found was that, for sure, the pandemic has impacted student mental health, and social isolation are big themes leading to depression, anxiety, and loneliness. You can see, there's pandemic fatigue, and that's all related to anxiety and increased academic load and things like that. So again, our current situation, the pandemic has had impact on our mental health, student mental health, and might have worsened it even more. So we've really talked about all the different factors that impact mental health. By psychosocial model, we really picked out stress as one of those factors that we often talk about, but we really wanted to highlight that our current situation and factors do impact mental health, and I used the pandemic as one of those factors that impact mental health. I don't know if there's any questions, but I'm happy to any questions if there are any. But I'm also happy to move ahead to talk about what we're going to talk about next is mental health and academic integrity. So before we start this section, have you noticed changes in the instances of academic misconduct since the start of the pandemic? I'm curious. The article here I'm showing is an article that was, from Lucy. She's a reporter at CBC, and she does a lot of stuff with post-secondaries. And she interviewed our vice provost at the time, Dr. Barker. She also interviewed Mount Royal. And the sense was that there was some increases, particularly at Mount Royal. During the pandemic of academic misconduct, there was a little bit of an increase on our end, reported by Dr. Barker. But as the pandemic moved on, I'm informally talking with associate deans and people like that, and we're hearing there has been an increase, and the poll says that there is a lot of individuals who are unsure, but There are individuals that are saying in poll here that they're experiencing, or they've noticed a lot more or more academic misconduct. So thank you for your responses there. So what are some of the reasons that students engage in academic misconduct? There are a lot of different factors, as with, impacts on mental health or mental illnesses. But this article here really talks about some of the different factors that impact mental health. It's a quick article and it's quite an interesting one. But essentially it follows the story of Alex, who it was many years ago that he engaged in academic misconduct, but he talked about his situational factors, that at the time when he engaged in cheating, it was copying from a quiz from another student. But during that time, he said that his grandfather passed away, that he also had a long-term girlfriend that he broke up with. He wasn't prepared for the test at that time. So he really indicated some of the situational factors or individual factors that led him to cheating, right? It was an exam that was worth only 1%. It was a quiz. There was 10 of them and it was only worth 1%, but he engaged in academic misconduct, despite that being so little. But here's some of the reasons that students engage in academic misconduct, right? Whether it be contextual or situational factors. Again, we're seeing here during the pandemic that it has been, your experience is that there has been more academic misconduct during the pandemic for whatever reason that is, because of the pandemic. Specific events, expectations also would be included in here. But as well, individual factors, so motivation, self-efficacy. So those individuals with lower motivations might be more endorsing of engaging in academic misconduct, as well as those with maybe less confidence or less self-confidence or less efficacy or skills as well. And we know mental health does impact academic integrity, as I will talk a little bit more about here. But one thing is, there isn't too much research on this. And, I think there's only a handful of articles that I'm aware of that has really looked at the impact of mental health on academic integrity. In some of the articles here, what they're finding is that stress, again, nothing new from, I'm sure you can expect this, but stress, anxiety, depression related to attitudes towards plagiarism or engaging in academic misconduct. Another study in 2016, I think it did the study with med students. But what they found was that being stressed out was a primary motivator for cheating. And there has been small relationships that have been found with social anxiety and academic dishonesty as well. But what we're saying here, and it has been found, is that improved mental health is related to less cheating, right? So it's pretty evident, or at least from this type of research here, is that mental health is related to academic integrity. And if we improve mental health, what it's saying is that it leads to less academic dishonesty. I don't know if there's any questions so far, anything in the chat. Again, if there are any questions or any thoughts or comments, feel free to let us know. What we're saying here is that, we're not saying that these factors or these things that happen are an excuse for academic misconduct, but I think by really talking about it, by understanding, all these different factors, it helps us better address this and hopefully reduce academic misconduct at post-secondaries. Another way to think about this is to really think about the reverse relationship as well. I think this hasn't been talked about as much, but thinking about academic integrity and mental health, we can think about it, mental health impacts academic integrity, but we can also think about academic integrity and the processes and practices related to it has an impact on mental health as well. I don't think that has been brought out a lot, so I like to just highlight that a little bit. I don't know if anybody is involved in academic misconduct processes or procedures, I know I have been, maybe not academic integrity, but you can think about the parallel of non-academic misconduct as well as impacting mental health, the process, right? If you think about a student who might be accused of cheating, they're going through the process, they have to meet individuals like the dean, or speak with a panel or a committee that assesses these things. You can imagine, even for a student who hasn't engaged in any misconduct but has been accused, or there might be some evidence pointing to that. You can imagine the situation they're in, the additional stressors, in addition to not knowing the outcome, the impact on their academic record, things like that, and impact how that might impact the students' well-being. I don't know if anybody has any experiences or have gone through this process and would like to share. Again, nobody's if somebody does want to share experiences, please let me know. And I think one thing to think about is, how do we mitigate the impact of the process on the student mental health as well?
Andrew, Corrine just added her comment and kindly included her study in the chat as well.
Awesome. Let's take a look at the chat. Experiences with contract cheating or stress. Corrine, I don't know if you wanted to comment on your study here. You don't have to if you don't want to, but
yeah, I certainly can. I'm just going to turn my camera on if everyone can see. Sure. Yeah, actually, we did actually complete a study at Bow Valley College in 2021. It was done actually right after Academic Integrity Week in last year. And so during the pandemic, and we explored the different behaviors that learners engage in. Of course, it was a self-report survey,
right.
So definitely a socially undesirable behavior, but very interesting results, because we explored lots of different behaviors that they had engaged in sort of at their time at the college. And we also actually explored the different stressors that they were reporting that they were experiencing sort of in the last year. So what was really shocking to us are the level of stress that they're experiencing. And here we just explored the different life events. So they self-disclosed some of the life events that they had been experiencing, and the number of traumatic event experiences. So that was something that was just really eye-opening for us. And as an instructor, I definitely walked away with that thinking and interacting with my learners in a much different way, because as they're engaging in academic integrity types of issues, and you listen to their stories now, it gives you a really different perspective on that, for sure.
And so are you seeing some parallels of what we're talking about here in your study, what you're finding then?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, this is why it's so interesting to me to hear about this, and definitely hear about any kind of resources, because that's exactly what we're trying to find at Bow Valley as well.
Well, thank you for that, Corrine. It was really great that you have a study, and I wasn't aware of your study, so I have to look that up.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, Jeff. How are you doing, Jeff?
Hello, Dr. Zito. Thank you for the presentation. I took this in last year, and I thought I need to hear him again. 1 year wiser. I wanted to ask you about, I work in the student ombuds office at the University of Calgary, and so I am directly involved with the academic misconduct process, in that I support students who are alleged to have engaged in academic misconduct. Early, I think, within the first 18 months of COVID, I believed that I was seeing an increase in the number of cases that were ultimately deemed to be unproven, which included, I think, full-out false accusations or false alarms, as well as other cases where it's like, well, it kind of looks like something was going on here, but there's not enough evidence to actually find you responsible. What I was seeing was I saw the devastating effect that had on students, because some of them were actually super high achievers with very high aspirations. and it was extremely difficult for them. And I guess what I'm wondering is, do you have any knowledge of or is there literature on that? Is this something that gets looked at? Because I know, I mean, universities, I think probably universities and colleges have gotten better at reporting. Instructors have gotten better at reporting suspicious behavior. And I'm wondering, is there any research into the impact that has? And this maybe gets into the psychology of false accusations in general. I'm wondering if you have any knowledge of what's happening with particular reference to academic integrity.
Yeah, I don't know of any, studies that have been done on that or the literature on that. If somebody does, please let me know. But I can imagine, the impact. You mentioned there might be high achieving students who have never been in trouble, right? And they're accused of this. And I can really, really imagine how that can, really impact their worldview, devastate them, because it's something that they're not used to, right? And they have all the best intentions, but they're accused of this something, this thing that they haven't done. So I can really imagine the impact that this might have. I don't know if anybody else has any experiences like that or have any answers to I agree. I think we're getting better at detecting, but again, the process of that, does have an impact on students. And Jeff, I think you're right. And here's an additional thing that was quite interesting that came out of the pandemic. Our colleague here, Sarah Eaton, I know she is the person that is involved in Integrity Week, but she is on RSL or Research and Scholarship leave right now, so she can't join us today. But this is a study that she looked and explored mental health during COVID and exploring academic integrity and mental health. And what they're finding is that e-proctoring was something that has been used during the pandemic. I don't know if it's still used as much anymore because again, we're starting to get back in the actual physical classroom. But what they found is that we acknowledge that stress during exams is normal, but it seems that there may be emerging evidence that e-proctoring exacerbates stress levels far beyond what might normally be experienced during a face-to-face exam, right? And privacy concerns as well add to this. So, this is one thing that, we thought was something that we should be doing at the beginning of the pandemic, is having all these e-proctors watching you take your exam. But in fact, what we found, or what the evidence is suggesting from this study, is that e-proctoring might add to the stressors that students are experiencing, on top of, doing something that they haven't done before, right? Going online and doing that and or taking exams online. And added to the isolation and all that stuff. So it really does have an impact. I see your hand, Yang Yang.
Thank you, Andrew. My question was actually related for Jeff. Hi, everyone. I'm a postdoctoral fellow, but I also teach some classes. And so I have a sessional instructor dual role type of thing. And I'm really interested in just kind of helping support students through different stressors. But my question to Jeff was, I'm thinking about academic integrity as a two-way thing, right? Like as professors, as teachers, like we need to be showcasing and modeling integrity as well. And I'm just wondering, when it was found out that students were accused unfairly or that it was unfounded, like what was the process afterwards in terms of repairing kind of that relationship? Because I'm assuming that it was the prof who brought it up, and then like go through a whole process of like reviewing the academic misconduct. And then once you kind of concluded that perhaps it was a false alarm, how was that situation then dealt with afterwards? Thank you.
No, that's an excellent question. I don't, Jeff, if you have any insights.
Actually, over the course of the pandemic, and I think it's still happening, at the faculty level, there was an attempt made to effectively comfort students and say, listen, we have done the full investigation and we looked into this and this. So it's still a decision letter. But it ultimately, the decision letter said, you are not found responsible for this. And in fact, there was an attempt made, and I think it was the Cummings School of Medicine, the associate dean there, did a really good job of sort of explaining how this letter effectively lets you off the hook. So I don't know the exact wording, but they would say, you have been found guilty of no wrongdoing and you're free. And it was, I think the wording was actually focused on those students for whom the stress level might be extraordinarily high because they're looking ahead to a professional degree or a super competitive program. And so I think the idea was that students would be told, it's okay, you have done nothing wrong. And so that I think, I believe that probably expanded to other faculties, and it was taken on just because in those rare cases where it's effectively an oops on the part of the institution, they didn't want students to be carrying that stress forward.
Does a similar letter go out to the prof as well? Because it doesn't sound like an apology, right? It sounds like oh, good, you're free, you're off the hook, but it's not. I don't feel like it sounds sincere that way. Just trying to think about it from a student perspective.
Yeah.
Does it really help them if they're taking courses again with that same professor, in the future? Is that letter going to really help them feel less stressed out about that situation?
I don't know. I think again, the intent in the letter is to make the student feel whole. And I think I don't know if they go so far as to say, we're really sorry, but they might. And I don't, as to whether the professor is involved, I don't know that. I'm not aware of that happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think this is a good discussion about, some of the potential impacts and what we can do. Something that I haven't thought about, right? If somebody is falsely accused, is there some type of, a letter is great as one step, but is there other things that we can maybe do to support the student? I don't know, right? But it raises good questions. So thank you for that discussion. So we talked about it from the student perspective, but what about the staff and faculty perspective, right? Those who are a part of the process. Jeff, I know you're a part of the process. I've been a part of the process. Again, not specifically with academic misconduct, but with non-academic misconduct. And I can see, again, those who are part of the process, it might be, difficult for the faculty member, right, who is making these allegations. They don't want to. They might be hesitant to do so because they don't want to get a student in trouble, or have negative impacts on that student's careers, things like that. Having to make difficult decisions like expelling a student, for example, for academic misconduct might take a toll on individuals, right? I don't know if anybody had any thoughts on that or had any experiences they want to share, but I've heard from others that it has been quite impactful for those who are on the tribunals or the panels. And really affecting their mental health and well-being by being on the panels itself. So I don't think we've talked about this enough. And one way to really mitigate this is to offer trainings to get them prepared for these experiences, but yet also to offer supports where available as well. Those are some thoughts that I have around this, but I don't know if anybody else has any additional thoughts. And if we don't, that's okay too. We can have we do, Joanna.
Hi, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. This comment partly connects back to Yang Yang's comment about apologies as such. And I think it's really important to recognize that faculty who sanction students for academic integrity violations, and I have done that myself, don't do it maliciously. We engage in a very thoughtful process, often have discussions with our deans or chairs before we actually go through with the process, because we understand how impactful it is on students. So just because something is found unfounded doesn't necessarily mean that somebody has been falsely accused as such. So I think we have to keep in mind that, there are processes that are fallible, implemented by people who are fallible, and that we do engage in these conversations or processes without malicious intent. So I have had some quite stressful experiences with students. A student who ended up failing a semester and having to return to complete courses again because of systematic academic integrity violations. And I think the problem is that in a lot of places we have policies and procedures, but we don't necessarily have very good training for students as to what constitutes academic integrity violations. So, we blast them with the legal documents essentially and say, well, if you plagiarize or if you do this, you will get sanctioned, without providing really good training. And I think there needs to be training for faculty on how to address it. And there needs to be training for students on how to avoid it, because it is a very anxiety inducing process on both sides of the table.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that, Joanna. I don't teach right now, but I've taught in the past, and I had to make some tough decisions as well. And I hear you. It is stressful for the student for sure, but it is also stressful for the faculty member. Bringing these charges up. I had to chat with various individuals before making some of these decisions. But yeah, because you do have. We don't take this lightly for sure, as you're saying. Thank you for your comments. So what aspects were most impactful going through the academic integrity process? So just, fleshing this out a little bit more. But just going back to, Joanna, your comments, you do highlight some of the maybe solutions or remedies. We'll discuss that in a few slides. But let's see what people's thoughts are on poll number 4. Yeah. Additional workload, emotional impact. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the responses. Yeah. What we're seeing is so the time involved, the additional workload is a big impact, emotional impact. The potential relationship with the student. Because again, you might see the student in different classes. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you for that. Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is a lot of the things that we've alluded to already. Is there additional chat? Yeah, Nancy has a chat there. I never sign academic misconduct to a student unless it's extremely confident about defending it. Should it go to? Yeah. So again, we really don't take these things lightly for sure. Okay. So we've talked about the factors that impact mental health. Again, whether that be stress or situational factors, additional factors. We've discussed academic integrity and mental health and the relationship, right? So it's not just mental health affecting academic integrity, but the integrity process itself can have impacts for students and faculty members. But let's talk a little bit about resources and ideas on how we can address these things. So increasing mental health and academic integrity. So let's talk about resources, practices. I'm curious for poll 5, how knowledgeable are you about the mental health resources that are available for students? Great. So we're seeing most people are at least a little bit knowledgeable, but there's a large majority that are somewhat knowledgeable and very knowledgeable. So that's great to see. And then for the next poll, hopefully I didn't do anything to that poll. Did I close it? Oh, there it goes. So how knowledgeable are you about campus mental health resources for faculty and staff, for yourselves, who may be faculty and staff? Okay, so we're seeing more, we're still seeing a majority who are somewhat knowledgeable or very knowledgeable, but we do see more individuals who know a little bit or are not knowledgeable at all. So there might be less knowledge of resources for yourselves. Okay, thank you for your responses. So increasing academic integrity and mental health. Here's one thought that I've had posed to me. Does addressing academic integrity mean one doesn't support mental health? or if you support mental health in your classrooms, does that mean you don't support academic integrity? That's been posed to me. I don't know if others have been posed that, but what I'm thinking is that if you do academic integrity, and really make that a priority for you, then you're not supporting mental health, or vice versa. But here's the punchline is that if we support academic integrity, we're supporting mental health. If we support mental health, we support academic integrity. And a lot of the things that I'll talk about in the next few slides address both. So it's not an either or thing. You don't choose academic integrity or mental health or whatever one of those. But if you choose something, if you think about the things that I'm talking about, they actually support both. Actually, a second thought is that it is a shared responsibility. And I think I forget exactly who said, but some of the comments that we were at discussion alluded to that it's not only on the responsibility of students to engage in academic integrity, but it's also important for faculty and staff to create that environment for academic integrity and to support academic integrity. So let's go through some of the things that I have listed here, but feel free to chime in if you have any other thoughts or points that you wanted to share. Let's talk a little bit about the classroom and instructor level. Things that you can do in the classroom, again, these are best practices in teaching and learning also. So, by engaging in all these things, you're addressing multiple things, right? Whether it be creating an environment for better learning or improving mental health or supporting academic integrity. So activities and assessments that encourage deep learning rather than just things like rote learning, right? Assessments, shouldn't always be in a multiple choice form, but should really expand and really get students to really think about that, right? Again, I'm not an expert in that, but it does make sense. Increase engagement and investment in course materials. The more engaged students are, the more they want to learn, the less they're going to be engaging in academic misconduct, or else, the more they're engaged, the more they find interest, the more that supports their, well-being. So things like weekly email recapping the week, related materials and connecting materials to personal goals, authentic assessments. The example I have here, if this is a course in the Workload School of Education, it's for developing teachers that will go out in the classroom. So an assignment that creates a lesson plan, for a teacher might be a really good way to be an authentic assessment, but it also really interests the student, right? As somebody who teach or used to teach psychology, wanting them to engage in topics that interest them, right? Whether that be positive mental health or specific disorders, again, really engaging them to do things that they're interested in. Clear expectations, discuss academic integrity, and I think it was Joanna that brought this up. We want to discuss that, but we don't really make it clear what it is. Just saying that if you engage in academic integrity, dishonesty, you're going to have experience all these consequences. It's more than that, right? It's telling students what that is, and how not to engage in these things. Make students feel they're successful, or they will be successful, right? Students may also rationalize cheating if they understand that this is the instructor's intention is to fail them, right? Gone are the days where, professors, I hope, professors don't do this when they, at the beginning of the course, look to the left, look to the right, two of you aren't going to be here anymore. I hope people don't do that anymore, but I hear that still happens, right? So we want to create that sense that students are going to be successful. Using various assessments, strategies to allow students to showcase what they've learned. Again, we've kind of discussed this in a point above. Other things that we can do. This is something that I point to, right? And it relates to what I just said in the previous slide, but it's more geared towards online learning and during the pandemic. But a couple of colleagues, Melissa Boyce, who's the Associate Dean in Faculty of Arts, and a colleague of mine in psychology, and my grad student, I like to also promote her, Brittany Lindsay, but they did a study on looking at how do we better support students' well-being during the pandemic. And again, these are best practices in teaching and learning also, but really, again, it meshes well with what I've said before, but here's, they've had 8 tips, right? But I only could fit, I think, 4 of them on my slide here, but include interactive elements in your course to promote active learning and a sense of community, create clear course schedules to ensure the course stays organized. And again, I have the link there. So yeah, if you wanted to go read their blog article, this is hosted on the Taylor Institute website. So beyond the classroom and the instructor level, the department and program level can also really address academic integrity and mental health as well. So holding presentations like this in your department or faculty, getting everybody to really talk about this topic, and the intersection of mental health and academic integrity might be one way of doing it. Training on how to support students or colleagues in distress, we have those as well. Curriculum assessment and design. I think this is an important one, and I've experienced this. We've in psychology just did a curriculum redesign several years ago. I think we're about ready due for another one. But one thought, is, I used to teach senior courses. I think I taught 400 courses, and by that point, we'd expect students to have knowledge of how to write a research proposal, how to do APA citations in our discipline. But students were coming into that class without those skills. So how do we scaffold, how we build on, those early courses so that they gain skills on how to do research, how to write a paper, how to do citations, better in those 100 or 200 and 300 courses before they get into the 400 level courses. Promote available resources. There's a lot of great videos here on academic integrity that were, I think, developed by, they were developed by the Taylor Institute, but I think Sarah had a hand in developing these. Make those available. The websites and communications are very, very important. We know students do access websites to look for resources. So having them available is something that could be quite important. I do see a chat. Let me just look at that. Yeah. You just posted a link there. Thank you. So just knowing resources where they exist, I won't go over this too much. Again, I have the links here, but Student Wellness Services is a great resource. And here's just some of the mental health resources that they have available, but I do want to point to the one here, Student at Risk. If you do feel a student is, are concerned about a student, you can always reach Student at Risk and they will make the reach out for you. The Thrive Priority Support Network is something that I think is quite important as well. Not many people know about it, but it is a resource that we have on campus. And one way to really activate this is to just complete your gradebooks, your D2L gradebooks on time, because they use the gradebooks to flag students that are maybe in trouble academically and contact them and outreach through that way. But also there is a form that instructors can fill out if they feel a student is, or they're concerned about a student academically. Resources for faculty and staff. Again, I won't go through this. We have the FAP, we have the mental health consultant who is there for advice, to make referrals, the support. Her name is Amanda Habiak, and you can see her contacts there. So if you have a question, you're wondering how to support a fellow a colleague, or you have some questions yourself, please reach out to Amanda. Again, here's some more work-life well-being, staff-related resources. But I do want to really talk about the university level supports and what we can do on a campus. Reviewing policies through a mental health lens is something that we should all be doing. But really thinking about, for example, the process, right? The academic integrity policies and processes, and really thinking about them through a mental health lens. And how do we support students who, for example, may have been achievers and been flagged as somebody who might have engaged in academic misconduct. How do we support them? If they're found to not have engaged in academic misconduct, how do we support faculty members, right? Whether it be through better training or supports available to them. So really thinking about all those processes through a mental health lens. Changing our culture. This is much harder done been said, but we're doing that on our campus at UCalgary, right? We're implementing the post-secondary standard for mental health well-being of post-secondary students. Again, we know that improved mental health does relate to less cheating, and really thinking about how do we do that holistically on our campus. The standard is one way of doing that. And really thinking about the learning environment. There has been a lot of, starting to be a lot of talk about how do we create, environments, learning environments, classroom environments that are conducive for well-being. Simon Fraser has done a lot of work on this, and they created this resource. But essentially engaging in all these things leads to better mental health, as well as decreased academic integrity. And I think that might be the slides that I have for this presentation. I'll have a couple of more slides to end off, but I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or questions, anything that they wanted to discuss. Happy to open the floor up. Let's see some comments. Well, thank you for attending, Linda. Anybody want to have any things that they want to talk about or discuss? Yeah. What would you like to say?
Sorry, I'm taking up more time.
No,
Thank you for the opportunity.
No, please do.
I'm just reflecting back. I've never had a situation where I had to go as far as kind of starting the whole process of academic misconduct and so on. But I have noticed a lot of anxiety in class. So not just kind of from a more formal students need, like students coming with accommodation letters and so on for various reasons, but just students emailing me or coming to me individually talking about their anxiety, some to the point that they can't physically be in class in person because it's too anxious.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of struggling to how can I be more supportive, be it kind of through course design or whatsoever, because this anxiety is affecting group work, not just the individual work. So I'm hearing from students themselves with regards to the anxiety that they are experiencing. And then I also get comments back from other students in the group that would be working together with some of these students to say they're not showing up or they're not coming and we're sharing all the same grade and we don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
So what I have kind of done is kind of acknowledge that that's happening and then give the opportunity for the group to come to talk to me together, also individually, but no one's ever taken up that offer. And so people in the end, for the group work situations, I know there is residual resentment between students because some have worked harder than others to get the final grade, but nobody wants to really face that, or maybe not with me. And so in addition to kind of just saying, I'm available to kind of speak with you, but recognizing the power dynamics involved, like what would there, who would I kind of send them to if they have wanted to process that further? Because I'm wondering, maybe the offer wasn't enough. The fact that people didn't take it up doesn't necessarily mean they didn't want to have something to kind of be able to navigate that situation.
Yeah. It sounds like doing quite a bit to support the students. And are you finding the situation with coming back to right now, or I guess, I'm hearing that there might be some struggles with transitioning back to in-person work from an online environment for some, again, increased anxiety and things like that. So again, it sounds like you're doing quite a bit, but there are specific resources on campus like the Student Success Center that might address some of these issues. And for sure, we have at Student Wellness Services, whether it be anxiety related groups, we do have individual counseling, we do have one at a time counseling. So those are some resources that you can refer students to for sure. I don't know if anybody else has any other additional thoughts.
Because I wonder if students, the reason that they were withdrawing or feeling disconnected were more anxiety related and not so much like not being, integral to their learning and wanting to engage. It was whatever was going on beyond, the biopsychosocial model that you addressed.
Well, and so one thing that we're doing is to address this is, asking, if instructors are comfortable to start the discussion about mental health right from the beginning, and to really acknowledge that, because in our research, we're finding that the more that instructors talk about that at the beginning of the class, the more welcoming they feel, the more engaged they feel. And to facilitate that, we actually have the Reach Out project, which is from Student Wellness Services. But a part of that project is having classroom visits. So their peers who professors can sign up for this program. They have peers come out for the first 5 minutes of the course and talk about specific topics, whether it be self-care, whether it be resources, whether it be mental health. That can be some way of really transitioning faculty members into having that discussion if they're not comfortable or wanted to have more content related to mental health. So that's one resource that we have for faculty members.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. And thank you for the presentation. I just have one last question.
Sure.
And that is with regards to the research you shared around, noticing that there was more academic misconduct when there was more stress and more depression and so on. When a case lands, let's say, on Jeff's desk, and there needs to be some type of external kind of review happening, if it is found that the student has a mental health struggle or perhaps is diagnosed with some type of mental health illness, is that then used as evidence to say that, oh, this misconduct is understandable, whatever it is that they've done, or
Yeah, I think that's in my experiences, they have we take those into consideration. Again, it's not an excuse for somebody who engages in academic misconduct, but again, I think we think about all these different factors. I don't know if Jeff, you had any kind of response to that as well, or any additional thoughts?
Like, is the mental health component taken in the assessment of whatever the ultimate conclusion becomes of the review?
Andrew, I would say you're correct in that it doesn't become an excuse. But I think when those decision makers, associate deans, most of the time are determining a sanction to apply, I mean, I think they do try and look at the whole picture. And there is a little bit of wiggle room in terms of the sanctions that do get applied. But it would never go from, well, instead of failing the course, you just get a warning. It can be more subtle than that. But I mean, I think in general, the people who make these decisions ultimately want to help the student understand. I don't think it's all about just getting people in trouble.
Here's the Campus Mental Health Strategy website. I really enjoy giving this talk all the time, and I'm really great to see all the discussion and all the great contributions. Thank you for attending, and we'll have a good rest of the day. It's lunchtime. Well, for me, it is.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cito. We really enjoyed your session. It was very informative, and a lot of resources that you shared that we appreciate. So thank you, those of you that are joined us today. We are really excited to continue Academic Integrity Week here at the TI. We have another session on October 20th called FOIP, Training for Academic Integrity, from 11 to noon. And then our final session will be on Friday, October 21st. One instructor's method to approach writing a research paper using enhanced academic integrity. So I just added the link to the chat if you'd like to register for those sessions. Thank you, everyone, and please enjoy the rest of the day.